Penniman. I'm from SMUD's Community Education and Technology Center. I'd like to welcome you here today for our Is an Electric Vehicle Right for You webinar. We hope you're staying safe and are glad you've joined us for this presentation. As your community-owned utility, SMUD offers a variety of educational and online resources to educate and empower our customers to join in SMUD's new clean energy vision to provide carbon-free electricity by 2030. All of our workshops are being recorded, so please check them out at smud.org/workshops. After this presentation, you will receive an email from SMUD requesting your feedback and a short survey, hopefully with a working hyperlink, where you can provide feedback for this course and also suggest ideas for any future courses. There will be section breaks in the presentation where we'd welcome your thoughts and questions that come up. We'd like to request that you ask them via the chat area on the side of your screen, which I'll be monitoring and will ask to John at those breaks as they make sense. However, if we aren't able to answer your questions during the time we have, I'll capture those questions and circle back with you to answer them if I'm able to, or I'll introduce you to one of our subject matter experts, such as our presenter today, John Grindrod. Electric vehicles are becoming more common in our society, and as used EVs emerge on the market, more and more people have access to this type of vehicle. Whether it's at home, workplace, or at a publicly available charger, the way that we fuel up our EVs is a major difference from what we've been used to with traditional vehicles. With such a major shift, it's natural to have questions about not only the charging and range concerns, but also about what the actual cost of owning and charging an EV are. The intent of our course today is to shed some light on these topics and answer any questions you may have about EVs. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Joining us from the SMUD team is John Grindrod, a senior program manager in our Advanced Energy Solutions team. John has managed customer-facing offerings ranging from low-income programs to energy efficiency programs in SMUD's AES department for the past 22 years. For the past 8 years, he served as program manager for SMUD's residential drive electric program, a role in which he educates the public on the implications of going EV and develops and implements EV program offerings to help make EVs more understandable and accessible to customers. John owns and drives a 2023 Nissan Leaf and has had the opportunity to test drive many of the EV models currently on the market. And this experience has provided him with substantial insights into the EV lifestyle. With that, John, please take it away.
Thank you, Joey. Appreciate the introduction. We're just going to dive right in to our subject matter right here. And so I'm going to drive my own screen changes and look forward to any questions or comments that you have that, as Joey mentioned, he'll be bringing to me during our little section breaks. Let's see here. We're going to start off with a little agenda here. We're going to be talking today in 4 major sections. We're going to talk about some EV basics, which will include some of the history of EVs, terms to know, an overview of how EVs work, a little bit how they're different from gas engine cars. And then a big question on a lot of folks' minds are the fundamentals of range and charging. How do I charge? Will I make it where I'm going, etc. We'll look at a sampling of the range and the cost of EVs, how charging works, where to charge, etc. And then we'll get into the economics and benefits of EVs, so fueling costs, things like that. Purchase incentives. There's a lot of incentives out there that are available to help bring the cost down of an electric vehicle. They do tend to be a little bit more expensive than gas cars, but that price parity is getting closer and closer all the time. And then finally, we're going to finish up with some resources. We're not actually going to tour PlugStar. That was a tool that we had before. I forgot to update that on this presentation. But we'll be looking at some EV tools that we think that you'll find useful, and those are available at smud.org. So let's get started right in with EV basics. So in the picture here, that's actually one of the first early electric vehicles back in the 1800s. They first appeared on the scene in the mid-19th century. The first production car was actually made in London back in 1884. So I think most of us do not think of EVs, electric vehicles, going back into the 1800s, really not even to the 1900s so much, but they've been with us for a long time. Back at that time in the early development, they had a top speed of about 20 miles an hour. So they weren't going very fast, but they would get you around town a little bit. And by the end of, or by the turn of the 20th century, so the end of the 19th century, there were actually about 34,000 electric vehicles registered in the United States. So kind of unexpected when I ran across this history years ago, really surprised me. But they peaked around 1900 to 1910, and Henry Ford and the invention of the assembly line, and along with some other developments, like actually, interestingly enough, the development of a muffler, which made gas cars a lot quieter and more practical, electric starter that made cars easy, gas cars easier to start, and more readily available petroleum and roads where you could actually take long trips. That led to the decline of electric vehicles because the technology was not ready for EVs to go on long trips like they are today. Some terms that we're going to be using throughout this presentation, and just terms to know if you're researching, exploring the EV world. So the acronym EV and PEV, they're used interchangeably, electric vehicle or plug-in electric vehicle. So when we're talking about an EV, certainly in this presentation, we're talking about one that you can plug in to a power source, typically at home. There are stations, lots of stations out in the public too, but we're talking about one that plugs in to recharge a battery. BEV is a battery electric vehicle. PHEV is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And I'll explain a little bit about how those both work in a minute. Kilowatt hour, kWh or kilowatt hour. So batteries in EVs are the capacity is measured in kilowatt hours, which is how you're billed for your electricity at home. But you can think of that as kind of an equivalent to a gas tank, and how many gallons would a gasoline tank hold. kWh or kilowatt hours is a measurement of how much batteries will hold in an electric vehicle. And then finally, some charging terms. So there's level 1, level 2, DC fast charger, supercharger, which is Tesla typically. These are types of chargers, and I'll explain how those work, but just wanted to kind of familiarize you with some of these terms from the outset. All right, battery electric vehicle, or BEV. So picture's worth 1,000 words, right? This little battery on wheels is kind of how it works. So this is an actual cutaway of an actual battery electric vehicle. And you can see here where I'm moving my cursor, that's a bank of batteries. And up here you have an electric motor. And just like this little graphic here, that's how it works. You charge up the batteries, the battery drives the electric motor. I think that's stuff that we can all make sense of. Now, they're a great choice for intermediate to long range driving these days. It used to be that you'd have a top range of about 80 miles, as we'll see a little bit later in the range sampling. There's a few vehicles now, a few EVs, BEVs that have over 400 miles of range, and it's very typical to find between 250 and 300 miles of range. So they're a good choice. Low cost electricity is fuel. We'll talk about that a little bit more too, but a phrase I like to use is that charging EV at SMUD's discounted rate for EV owners is like paying less than $1 a gallon of gas. It's really good for most commuting. I use mine for commuting a lot. I live down in Galt. I drive up to SMUD. It's wonderful for commuting, and also for just around town, errands on weekends and things like that. It's great. I'm not sure I would drive my Leaf across country, but there are cars that you certainly can do that with. Several models in the 200 to 300 mile range, as I mentioned, and there are more 400, 600 mile range vehicles coming along on the way, and we already have one or two that are over 400 miles. And so about 3/4 of the EVs, remember I said there was a distinction between PHEV, which is beyond our next slide, but about 3/4 of the EVs that are on the road are battery electric vehicles. And I should pause to mention here, this little asterisk down at the bottom, the battery range can be affected by a lot of things. If it's really hot, you may be using your air conditioner. Well, that's coming from your battery. If it's really cold, you're using the heater. If you're going uphill a lot, you use more energy that way. If you're going downhill a lot, it actually charges your battery up. And if you drive fast with a heavy load, etc., all those kinds of things can affect your range overall. So let's have a look at how a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle works. And again, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Essentially what happens here, you have a battery that drives a motor, an electric motor, just like in the previous slide. But in addition, when that battery capacity, which is usually much smaller than in a BEV, when that is exhausted, a gasoline engine kicks in seamlessly. You never even know that it's changed over, and you're driving on gas just like a normal gasoline engine vehicle. So typically, PHEVs have electric ranges of between 20 to 50 miles on the upper end, which is more than enough for most of us to do our daily driving around town or even commuting, especially if we're commuting to work and have charging at work. So it's a really great choice if you do drive long distances on a regular basis. If you go down from Sacramento to the LA area, you can certainly do that in a BEV. You're going to have to stop and charge at least once, whereas a PHEV, it's really just like a gas engine vehicle. And you could drive from here to New York with the same way that you would with a gas car. So the PHEV, another advantage there is this has a lower cost and it's cleaner fuel. So it's better for our environment, for our local air qualities. And it's great for, again, around town usage. You may never have to use the gas engine. And I do know people who have driven for over a year in a PHEV and never used any gas. Obviously, they're not going super long distances. So they're common in the 30 to 40 mile range of electric power, but their total range, when you include the gas, can be over 600 miles. And a lot of them are well over 500 miles. And as I mentioned, you could drive from Sacramento to New York the same way you would with a gas car, where you could do that with a battery electric vehicle too, but you have to stop and charge a lot more. And about a quarter of the EVs on the road are PHEVs. Some maintenance advantages that I always like to highlight. These are things that I did not think about that much until I purchased my first electric vehicle back in 2017, but there's no oil changes. So it's not only a cost savings, but you don't have any oil leaks on your garage or in your driveway because there's no oil, and it is less hassle. You don't have to take the time to get that changed a couple times a year. EVs have what's called regenerative braking, which means when you take your foot off the accelerator, that electric motor actually turns into a generator and it generates electricity back into the battery. So it gives it a little bit of a charge, but you don't use your brakes nearly as much. And so you get a lot less brake wear. So there's a maintenance advantage there where you don't have to replace your brakes nearly as often. And that's really true. There are fewer moving parts and much less friction, a lot less heat generated. So you have much fewer mechanical breakdowns and parts last longer. So the vehicles themselves last longer. There's no radiator, there's no spark plugs, there's no timing belt on BEVs. You do have that on PHEVs, but because that gas engine isn't used nearly as much, then it lasts a lot longer. The maintenance advantages are there, and that engine's going to last a lot longer. So overall, it saves you a lot of money. So when you look at the lifetime cost of a electric vehicle versus a gas engine car, the lower maintenance is only part of what helps make the overall cost, the lifetime cost, much lower than a gas engine. Fueling also contributes to that too, which we'll talk about in a minute. So here's one of our little session breaks. I'm going to stop and pause and see if there's any questions in the chat.
Right now, we're looking good, John.
Okay.
but we'll give a moment here. If anybody does have any questions, could pause. Uh, what's the status of PHEVs in the future? Are we seeing a lot more of those come on the market?
Well, not a lot more. It's still a popular choice for some, but as I mentioned, about 75% of these cars of EVs on the road are battery electric vehicles. Only 25% are the PHEVs. Some people really like them as an idea, as a way to kind of transition. They may not feel comfortable making the jump all the way into a battery only vehicle, so they might just go with a PHEV for a couple of years. Leasing is also a popular option because it kind of limits that commitment. And then, you really get the feel for that EV lifestyle that I talk about. And then a lot of people will kind of use that as a transition, and then the next vehicle they buy after that is all electric. But again, people who drive long distances on a regular basis, they often prefer a plug-in electric vehicle or a hybrid plug-in hybrid electric vehicle.
Very good. We have a couple of questions that have popped up in the chat, John. I'm gonna go one at a time for you.
Okay.
The first is, does a BEV still have a 12-volt battery?
It does. It does things like operates the when you start the car up, there's a bunch of things that happen, electronics. Your radio still works off of that 12-volt battery. Your light, when you open the door, it works off of that battery. So your larger battery, the big one that drives that drives the car, it also charges that 12-volt battery. But it is there. But I think they tend to last a lot longer because one of the major stresses on a battery is a gas car is starting the car up.
Hmm, good to know. The second question we have in the chat is, how long do the main batteries last?
Good question. The modern age of EVs has really started up around 2010. So we're getting increasing history. um, they tend to last a long time, and there's a little asterisk behind that statement. So most of the batteries, most of the models of EVs out there now have liquid cooled charging or liquid cooled batteries. So when you're charging, they're cooling the battery so that you don't have as much damage, or even when you're driving along, it maintains the temperature of the battery so they last a lot longer. But the really good news is that, at least in California, and it may be a nationwide requirement, I'm not sure, but there's a requirement to have a 100,000 mile or 10-year, it's 8 year, I think it's 8 years or 100,000 mile warranty on the batteries, and it's pretty comprehensive. So if the batteries go down below a certain level, then the car manufacturer is required to replace the battery. And that does happen. I don't hear of many people complaining about, oh, my battery discharged and it doesn't work anymore. There are pretty good, strong consumer protections against that. And I have heard of people when they have had the problem, uh, then the manufacturer, the dealership, the manufacturer through the dealership that you purchased, they will actually even buy the car back at nearly the price that they paid for it. But it's really not common. The batteries are pretty hardy and they do last a long time. Most models, again, have liquid cooled batteries. Some are air cooled, and they tend to not last quite as long.
Great. Thank you, John. And you may have touched on this. There's a couple more questions popping up.
Mhm.
And I'll agree with this one. It's a concern of mine as well. Battery replacement is a big fear of owners. Is there
Mhm.
improvement coming in the future, such as lower costs or longer lifetimes?
Yeah, my answer is that I hope so. It's a little bit difficult to say. I think there's progress being made in that area. I don't have a lot of data on it, and it's really difficult. I've talked to dealers. I've talked to a lot of dealers, and asking them, "Hey, how much does it cost to replace the battery?" And they don't even know really, because when that question comes up, it has to go up to their corporate headquarters and everything. So that is something to keep in mind. On the one hand, I don't hear of many problems. On the other hand, there are not a lot of answers around that very question that you just asked.
Thank you. And then another question that came up, and if, by the way, anybody who's in the chat asking these questions, if you'd like us to expand on that or elaborate a bit more, please do follow up. The other question we have in the chat now is, I don't drive that much, less than 5,000 miles a year. Will that be a problem with an EV?
No, I mean, your battery, one of the big things with batteries, gas engines, they degrade over time, they wear out. We don't have that much of a problem with EV motors, but of course the battery, and one of the big stresses on the batteries, you charge it, it discharges, it goes back and forth. They're very hardy. They do last a long time, but the less you charge, the less you drive, the longer it lasts. So having the car not drive too much is like low miles on a gasoline engine car. It's not it's just beneficial. It's that much less wear and tear. But sitting without charging, I think if you're going for a long period of time, several weeks to a month or more, that could be an issue. But the good news is you can plug in and recharge it. It'll discharge very slowly, but you don't get degradation from the car sitting very much.
And if I could summarize what I think I heard there, John, the main driver of battery degradation and range loss is really about the charging and discharging, and less so about the time that the battery's been in service. Is that a good summary of what I think you said?
I think that's a fair way of characterizing it, yes. And when you do fast charging, again, so these are large public chargers that we'll talk about in a minute, or the superchargers you hear about in the case of Tesla. They generate a lot of heat in the batteries. That's why the liquid cooling and that technology that really makes the batteries last a lot longer and reduces the issues that you might have with an air-cooled battery.
Some more great questions coming in, John. Yeah, we're gonna rack your brain here.
Okay.
As a follow-up to the question about only driving 5,000 miles a year, this person was saying, how often should you charge? And I'm wondering if the question is, as in top it off. If it's just sitting in the garage, for example, are you better off discharging it, taking it down to 20% and then filling it up, or maybe drive it to 80%, back to 95, 80, 95? And to the person who asked that question, if you don't mind confirming that's where you were going with it. There we go. Yeah. Should I only charge when I need it, or like once a week?
Yeah, the conventional wisdom in the industry is that it's ideal to only charge up to 80% of the capacity. I personally tend to keep it at about 100%. Well, I charge up to 100%, but the reason for that again is that last 20% generates some more heat. It has to the charger slows down and trickle charges, so to speak, a lower power level. But that is where you can get some of that battery degradation. And then likewise, the recommendation often is to not go below 20% for the same reason, because that initial charging tends to be a higher power and can generate some more heat, because the charger, the car regulates and throttles back the power as needed. And so it's going to let the car charge a little bit a higher power level in the beginning and a lower power at the end, but that's where more heat is generated on both ends of the charging spectrum. So the answer is that's the general recommendation. For convenience sake, when I plug in, I let it go up to 100%. I only charge a couple times a week myself, but I've also gone down to where the light's blinking in my car and it's very low, which is not recommended. That's the equivalent of running out of gas. I never have run out of electricity in my car, so that's been good. But I guess the simple answer to the question is, I think you can charge as often as you like. If you have a big day the next day, you may not want to start off with only 50% of your charge. It's more of a personal choice on that in that scenario.
Thanks, John. And thank you for the questions. There's another one, and this one I've had some friends that listen personal experience with. these vehicles. So the question is, I've seen a lot of used Nissan Leafs for sale on Craigslist around 10 years old, circa 2013, 14. They say they'll only get about 50 miles on a full charge. And so the question is, what was that the original limit back then? I'm guessing as when they were new, or is that a function of a worn out battery?
Well, to begin with, they had probably a range back in at that time. The Nissan Leaf had a range of about 75 miles, so it's only lost about a third of its, or yeah, a third or so of its capacity, um, which isn't so bad. So it's kind of both. If it had started off with a 200-mile range and you're down to 50, that's definitely a lot of battery degradation. And I would just say, by the way, if you're going to purchase a used EV, I would just definitely recommend taking it to a dealer. So if it was a Nissan, take it to a Nissan dealer, have them do a battery test on it. They can plug that thing in and find out a lot of information. They can see how much it's been fast charged. It can see how much battery life is left and where the damage is. When I say damage, I mean these battery packs. I think I have a picture of it a little bit later, and it's like a little AA battery or AAA battery, just hundreds and hundreds of these things. And so each one of those is contributing to the overall battery, and those units, um, you know, some of them, can burn out completely. Well, you still have plenty of charge, or they may have less capacity. And it'll make more sense when you see the picture. And I'll try to remember to bring that back up again. Hopefully that someone answers the question. I think the picture will kind of make a little bit more sense. But but again, it's probably more of a function of just time and heat on the battery in the case of a 2013 Nissan Leaf. And they are air cooled, by the way, the Nissan Leaf. That's one of the things that I don't like about them as much, but I like the car itself. I've been driving, I'm on my second Leaf, and I had a 2017 and bought a 2023 also. So, well,
Awesome.
we better keep moving, and some of these questions may be answered in the upcoming slides too.
Yep, fair enough. I'll earmark the questions we haven't gotten to yet, and if they keep coming, I'll earmark them for the end for a Q&A session.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we should be able to answer the questions, so keep them coming. So a little bit of a just kind of again, pictures worth 1,000 words. Here's a sampling of costs, of vehicles and some range. There are lots and lots of more EVs, and I'll show you where you can look at them and get more information on every EV that's out there on the market. But we've been talking a lot about the Nissan Leaf. This does qualify. The 2024 qualifies for a federal tax credit, which brings that cost down. 212-mile range. Up to the Ford Lightning 320-mile range option. These, by the way, are the maximum range. Most of these cars have different battery pack options. So the more range you have in the battery, the more expensive the vehicle tends to be. Tesla Model 3, very popular. These are all PHEVs here. Chrysler Pacifica van. That 32 miles will do most of your driving around town for most of us. Most of us only drive 30 to 40 miles a day. But again, you're driving cross country on a long trip, whatever, driving into LA, 520 miles of overall range. And the RAV4 here, a popular PHEV. Up to 600 miles of range. And again, that 42 miles is more than enough for what most of us do on a daily basis. And you'll be able to access this presentation too, as Joey mentioned earlier, so you can go back and look at that if there's something you want to spend a little bit more time on. So how charging works, there's a lot of information on this slide here, but let me just go through fairly quickly and the different levels of charging. So in the industry, there's what's known as level 1, level 2, DC fast charging, and supercharging. So level 1 just really refers to the fact that this kind of charger plugs into a standard 120 volt outlet in your home. So this is one that you would have in your garage, just the same thing that your television or that your toaster plugs into. It's relatively lower power. 40 miles of range overnight might be a little bit generous, I suppose, on a for 10 hours. You could probably get that in most vehicles. They tend to add about 3 to 5 miles of range per hour of charging for most normal sedans, so not big heavy vehicles. They don't obviously they need more power, and you would get less range per hour of charging with level one. Used to be that all cars came with a level one, and this plug is the common plug for charging with both level one and level two, which leads me over here to the segue that level two charging refers to a higher power charging that uses 240 volts. So this would be something similar to maybe if you have a dryer, electric dryer, that would be 240 volts. If you have an electric stove or central air conditioning, those tend to be 240 volts. There's a wide variety of power levels within that. So the voltage is one thing, power is another. So they're at least twice as powerful as the level one charger. So they would add probably 8 to 10 miles of range per hour of charging at the low end, but at the higher end, and actually in kind of the mid case scenario with a mid with a middle level of power output, you'd get about 25 to 30 miles of charging per of excuse me, of range per hour of charging. And when I say middle level of power, so it depends on the unit of the EV charger, on the model of EV charger. Some of them are lower powered again, some of them are higher powered. And they all work on 240 volts, but you would need a bigger circuit breaker for the higher powered charger and larger wire when it was installed. But for most cars, and what we recommend is about a 32 amp output charger, and those are very common. They work on a 40 amp circuit breaker, and they will provide 25 to 35 miles of range per hour of charging, depending on the vehicle. And then there's DC fast charging. These are very fast public chargers. They're high powered. When I say public chargers, I mean you'll find them in public places, at grocery stores. Um, DC fast chargers, direct current, is what the DC stands for. And that's a little bit different than the alternating current you have in your home, but it allows a lot of power to be delivered very quickly. That's the Tesla superchargers are DC fast chargers. It's just that Tesla uses the term supercharger. And you can see some of the different plug configurations here. We already looked at this one here. The industry, engineers create these terms, and this is called a J1772 plug. That's the configuration of the little inputs when you plug it into the car. That pattern is referred to as a J1772. That's level one and level two charging. Now over here, we have what's called the CCS combo. And if you look at this, just this top part in this circle, it's the same as this. So that's going to plug into almost all non-Tesla and non-Nissan Leaf cars. So Chevy Bolts, BMWs, Fords, they use this configuration for fast charging. And you can see that these two prongs down here are for that high powered fast charging. So you would plug that into the car and it'll deliver up to 160 miles of range in as little as 20 minutes. Now the Nissan Leaf, this is kind of a leftover from what's quickly becoming a bygone era. This plug configuration is known as CHAdeMO. You're only going to find that on Nissan Leafs. Some older Japanese models of vehicles like the Mitsubishi Outlander would use this one as well. It's on its way out. Even the new Nissan Ariya doesn't use this anymore. It uses the CCS combo configuration. Still very high powered. And you'll find fast chargers out there that have this CHAdeMO configuration if you are considering a Leaf, but you're seeing less and less, fewer and fewer of the CHAdeMO plugs on fast chargers these days. And then you have what's called the NACS, the North American Charging Standard, and that's the Tesla configuration. This used to be proprietary to Tesla. They're the only ones that had it. Very powerful, very quick. And would allow up to 200 miles in as little as 20 minutes. So very high powered charging. And that's what the end of the plug looks like. Now, every single car manufacturer out there has made deals over the past 6, 8 months with Tesla so that their vehicles can use this configuration too. And there's adapters available. So these other vehicles, and they're rolling this out now. Ford has already done it. I think BMW may have done it already. A couple of the car makers are now able to, Rivian, for instance, is able now to, with that adapter, to be able to go to a Tesla fast charger and charge there. And starting in with 2025 models, we're going to start seeing the cars, the Fords, the other, the Fords, the Chevys, the BMWs, all the different car makers will start making their plugs to receive that's in the car itself. The receptacle will have this configuration. So right now you have to use an adapter. In future year models, you'll be able to just go plug straight in without an adapter. And there are home chargers now that are beyond Tesla chargers that are being made and available for sale with this plug configuration as well. That's a mouthful. There's a lot of information there. Let me get through a few more slides, and if there's some questions about that, I'll be glad to come back to this. Big question has been historically on people's minds is, where do I charge? So the overwhelming answer for almost everybody is your home. We like to say your garage is your gas station with an endless supply. And again, charging at SMUD's EV rate credit discount rate for EV drivers, it's like paying less than $1 a gallon for gas. So about 85% of EV charging takes place at home. And when I say 85%, I just mean amongst the society. You know, it's not just individual people that mostly charge at home. It's just almost all the charging. I've never been to a fast charger with my new car, which I've had for almost a year. I haven't taken that to a fast charger at all. I've done all my charging either at home or at work, which is the next one. So many workplaces are offering EV charging. SMUD certainly does, but there's a lot of workplaces out there where you can drive in the morning, plug in, you come out with a full tank in the afternoon. And the public chargers, the DC fast chargers that we just talked about, you find those at malls, grocery stores. You see them at some Rayleighs. I know SMUD has one right here. Walmart's will increasingly have them. I've seen them at Targets. Hospitals and office buildings, not necessarily all fast charging, but that level 2 charging. If you're going to a place where you might spend quite a bit of time, like at a mall, you plug in where you be in the mall for a couple of hours, you come out and you may not have a full tank, but you've charged up some. And by the way, for finding public charging, there's several apps that are available, PlugShare, ChargeWare, a couple. Most newer EVs, you can just push a button that says, find a charger, and it'll pop up a map and it'll take you right to public charging. So let's pause again and see if there's any other questions before we hit the next section. I know we're
Hi, John.
shorter on time.
We do have a couple. I think we'll do our best to get through these. So one of the questions we didn't get to the last round was about the batteries aging and degradation, whether or not battery degradation impacts the performance of the vehicle.
No, it doesn't. I mean, unless the battery's completely degraded, of course. But as long as there's charge in there, it's not going to affect, like, how fast you can go, or is the car all of a sudden only going to have a top speed of 10 miles an hour? No, that's not the case. It's going to be really all about range and how far you can drive.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. And there's a pretty strong comment in here, and I think it's in support of the migration to a standardized charging port. But I'll share the thought because I think it is valuable. It's in this person's experience renting EVs, they've found Tesla chargers are extremely reliable and everything else I've tried is extremely unreliable. Apps describe working and available chargers, but when they arrive, it's not true. Even a charger that appears to be functional simply won't start or won't accept payment. I wish there were more governmental or regulatory intervention on minimum standards. I've literally gone to 5 different chargers at 5 different locations before trying to get a single charge. And their ending parting comment is, what's interesting is they've never had a single similar issue with Tesla stations.
Yeah, I think your experience has been the experience of a lot of folks. It's been my experience as well. I haven't ever gone to a Tesla charger because I can't charge a Tesla with a Nissan. But that's a common experience. I've gone to fast chargers that on the app it said that it's, you know, they're charging available, and you get there and it's down, it's broken. It's also not uncommon to go to a fast charging station and find, you know, there's only 2 or 3 chargers and they're all full. People are there. Whereas when you go to Tesla, they're more likely to have, you know, 10, 20, 30 chargers, or in some cases, just, I don't even know, dozens of chargers all in one place, like down at Harris Ranch on I-5. And they are more reliable. And that is why so many of the car makers, all the car makers, you know, have inked these deals with Tesla. Hey, let us use your chargers. And so you know, it's been a big it's a big transition. It takes a lot, you know, with all the adapters that are needed, and you know, how do I pay for it, and how does Tesla charger recognize my car, those kinds of things. It's a heavy lift, but that's happening, and there is government you know, legislation aimed at standardizing, um, you know, for instance, having card readers, you know, so you can use a credit card. Some charging stations you can, and some you can't. But I think there's a law, and I'm not sure when you know, it takes effect, that all of the chargers that are out there in the ecosystem, so to speak, now are going to have to take credit cards readers. But the problem with those is that, you know, those things get dirty and they break down, and then you can't pay, or you have to figure out another way. So there are some challenges. The apps are still the best way to go, but maintenance of DC fast charging in particular it's an issue. It's a problem, and Tesla does it really well.
Awesome. Thank you for the comment, and thanks for the feedback, John.
Yeah.
One final question that ties into the charging protocols for the ports. Can a CCS combo charger be used at a Tesla charger station?
Now, yes. Now you have to. It's a complicated answer, but I'm just going to try to simplify and give a quick answer. So let's just use Ford as an example. Ford has already rolled out the adapters, and you have to have the Ford, I think it's the Blue Oval app, which is available to any Ford EV owner. And when you get to the charger, you can plug in, and the Ford Oval app will interact with Tesla and allow you to charge. That's a simplification. It's not difficult. It's not a challenge. You just have to, you know, make sure that the manufacturer of your EV is ready for you to be able to use the Tesla chargers. I'm not sure of the status of all of the different manufacturers. I know Rivian and Ford, for instance, have been rolling out adapters for the past several months, and the adapter you can just buy if you want. Ford is sending them out, and Rivian is sending them out free of charge. But the best way to understand that is to, you know, go on your EV manufacturer's website, find out what they're doing, or you can call a dealer.
Awesome. Does that answer your question for the person who asked that? And yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. That clears us out on the chat for now, John.
Okay.
Keep the questions coming, and thanks for all the great information.
Yeah, and we can stay here, you know, past time for me. I don't know if everybody else is available, but whoever wants to stay on, we can take those questions. But several more slides, so let's run through these real quick. I already mentioned the fact that the average daily drive for most California is less than 40 miles. So if you look at the economics of that, 12,000 miles a year is about 33 miles per day. Most of us drive around 12,000 miles a year. And when you look at the kilowatt hours, about 300 kilowatt hours of charging per month is about $35 to $40 per month on our special discount rate, EV discount rate. And if you have an EV and you haven't already, you can call SMUD or you can go on my account and you can provide your VIN, your vehicle identification number, and we can enroll you in that EV rate credit, which will give you about a 1.5 cent per kilowatt hour discount from midnight to 6 every day of the year. And that's the background on that, where that $35 to $40 per month comes from for the average driver. Most of us spend a lot more than that on gas. So driving a gas fueled car, 33 miles a day, at the average miles per gallon of the average vehicle in the United States is around 25 miles. At $4 a gallon, I think it's higher than that now, is about $158 per month in gas. So that's $118 per month in fuel cost savings. Obviously, if your car gets more than 25 miles MBG, and a lot do, it narrows that the savings for electric are lower. But again, the average miles per gallon for the average vehicle is 25 miles per gallon. So that's where all those numbers come from. The affordability question. So the federal tax credit has changed a lot. I'm not going to do a deep dive, but I am going to show you some tools where you can find information on the federal tax credit. It's up to $7,500. Used to be on all electric vehicles, and now because there's so many other regulations, not all vehicles do qualify, but it's easy to find which ones do. You go to fueleconomy.gov, and I'll show you what that is in a minute, and you can find if your model does qualify, and up to $4,000 on used electric vehicles. And there's some stipulations on that. You have to buy from a dealer, has to be value of MSRP of or purchase price of $25,000 or less, and there's some other stipulations there. But those are substantial numbers there. Clean Cars for All is a program. It's actually a statewide program. Locally, it's administered by the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District, and they've just changed. I didn't even update it here. Up to $12,000 toward a new or used EV. You have to turn in an older gas car. Now, this is an income qualified program, so if you want to find out if you qualify for it, then you can go to the SMAQMD, I think it's called .com, or just Google it, or better yet, go to SMUD.org, and we have links right to it from our Drive Electric page, SMUD.org/Drive Electric. SMUD has charge at home EV incentive, so that's really not for the car itself, but it's to make installing a charger and purchasing a charger more affordable and simpler. That's up to $750. So that's up to $250 toward a qualifying EV charger and up to $500 for a qualifying installation through the SMUD contractor network. And I'll show you where to find some more information on that. And I've already mentioned SMUD's EV rate discount, and it's like paying less than $1 a gallon. It's kind of repetitive right there, but it's again 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour between midnight and 6 a.m. That's for all of your household electricity. So we don't differentiate with the EV. We don't submeter that. So if you have a pool or a spa, you can program those to run in the middle of the night, and you get that savings on that electricity as well. Environmental considerations, really important for a lot of folks. The average EV reduces greenhouse gas emissions by about 2.5 metric tons per year, given how SMUD generates electricity. And it's getting cleaner all the time as we are increasingly generating electricity with cleaner power sources, fuel sources. And so electricity is about 70% cleaner than gas on a greenhouse gas basis. And again, I already mentioned it's getting cleaner all the time. There's environmental impacts of manufacturing electric vehicles as well as gas cars, but the fueling and the driving themselves is a lot cleaner with electricity than gas. I mentioned earlier the battery pack. So this is what like an overall battery pack looks like, but inside each of these square cases is something that looks like that. And you can see that's about like a AAA battery, right? Or double A, I guess. And they're all wired together all the way through. It's very intricate. That's, um, you know, where you could see where, heat, you know, all these batteries together can generate quite a bit of heat, especially when you're charging them up and you're running electricity from here to here to here to here. Um, and that's where the liquid cooling comes in to cool that down and to minimize the damage. Um, so I already mentioned their environmental impacts from manufacturing the car itself, but um, about a third of those um, of the CO2 emissions come from building the cars themselves. And that's going to be very similar to what it is with a gas car. But reusing and recycling batteries is a growing market. A lot of times when a battery is no longer able to drive a car, it's still good for, it can be repurposed and make a good home battery storage system. And of course, I don't think that's something you can do yourself, but they are, taking older batteries, repurposing them into home battery storage systems and reusing that. And then mining and recycling battery materials. I mean, it continues to be a concern. It's already a big business and it's only going to get bigger, but there's some links here when you receive the, if you go back and watch the presentation, you can click on those links and it'll take you some more information on battery recycling and environmental considerations. So now we're nearing the end here, and we'll be glad to take some more questions. But if you go to smud.org/drive electric, you're going to get to a page that looks like this. You can dig down on more information. There's some of our screen is not shown here, but we have tabs for charging, for incentives, for EV tools, etc. This is a real important resource over here on the right. You can call one of our SMUD EV advisors, and they're trained in a lot of lifestyle subject matter, EV lifestyle subject matter, and they can talk to you about charging incentives. They can talk to you about SMUD programs, etc. And they're very, very helpful, very useful. And if you have a deeper question about maybe your panel and things like that, we have energy specialists. They can transfer you to talk to an energy specialist who can give you more information and help you find ways of avoiding a panel upgrade, or talk about, right sizing your charger, which charger is right for you, and help you to make good decisions on how to install charging without maybe spending a whole lot of money. So this is really my I think, yep, the last one is going to be thank you, but this one here is a couple of tools, and I'm going to take us to these tools. This first one here is the SMUD EV estimator, and the second one is Electric for All. We kind of partner with Veloz, which an organization that promotes EVs, and their EV tool. And I want to take you on a quick tour of that. But before I do that, and while I switch over and find where I put that, are there any questions in the queue right now?
Hi, John. Yeah, there's one question about the EV Ride and Drive event on September 14th. And this person would like to confirm that will be an opportunity where folks will actually be able to take a test drive out in an EV.
Absolutely. Yes, you can get behind the wheel and drive it yourself, or you can ride in the vehicle. I will be there. It's going to be up at North of Thomas Regional Park, right across from Intercom High School, in conjunction with the farmers market. I think it starts at like 8:30, if I recall correctly. You may want to look that up. We have that information on our site. But yes, you can get behind the wheel, and even when you do, they will give you a $10 card or a voucher that you can use anywhere at the farmers market.
Very cool. And the follow-up to that, for that event, is this sort of information going to be conveyed during that event as well? And maybe that's a sidebar we could take on, John, is if we can somehow get the recording of this video, this course, playing somewhere out there, if that would be interesting to have in the background. But
Yeah.
what kind of information beyond the ride and drive itself takes place? Maybe that's an opportunity for a teaser.
Yeah, we have a lot of experts out there at the event. Excuse me, I got a little fog in my throat. I'll be there too, so I'll be glad to talk. I usually wear a white hat, so look for me in my white hat right here. And they always point and see the guy in the white hat, go talk to him. I'll be there to talk about this. We'll also have some energy specialists there and some other folks who are have years and years of experience, just personal experience driving an EV. So let me hit this here real quick. We have this this is our Drive Electric page, smud.org/drive electric. And I mentioned, I think the screen print showed this in the presentation, but what's down below here is information on charging, some of this information that we've just talked about, rebates and incentives. I mentioned, I think, the Clean Cars for All program. Where'd that go? Over here. Clean Cars for All. You click here and it'll take you to a site that'll give you information on the eligibility and everything you need to know. The SMUD Charge at Home program over here. I talked about that, so it'll help you install a charger. And then actually, if you're for EPR customers, for Energy Assistance Program rate, so that's SMUD's income qualified program that provides a discount on your monthly electricity. We'll also, if you have an EV, we'll purchase and install an EV charger for you at no cost at all. So that's all worth looking at. The charging map I'm going to jump to real quick. This is PlugShare. I'd mentioned there's some apps out there. As you can see, you click here and you can click and get some more information on like this, for instance, this charger here. It's going to tell you where it's at. In some cases, yeah, it tells you what the cost of the electricity is at that particular place, gives you some other information. But I want to really focus over here on our tools and resources. And I have our EV estimator I mentioned, and the Electric for All. It's right underneath that with links, and I've already opened those up. So I'm going to start off and go through a quick tour here of the EV estimator. I'm going to move this over a little bit, and this is what you'll see. You can do this through my account as well, and it will give you a little bit more of a customized quote, not quote, but estimate calculations based on your actual usage. I'm just going to use SMUD's headquarters zip code here. It's going to take you through some questions. And what's nice about this is it's going to take you through a little workflow, and then it's going to give you a report. So it's quick and easy and simple to use. You can slide this back and forth. I'm just going to keep it there. I'll say joint. Most of us join our tax filing, and this is going to help calculate the incentives that you may be eligible for. You can change your household income, and you can specify what's your budget. Oh, I'd be willing to go up to 40,000 or up to 30 or up to 50. I'll just choose 50,000, and it's only going to show us cars that are 50,000 MSRP or below. And then let's pick I'm going to pick a car that I know. I'm pretty sure this one is a Tesla, this popular vehicle. I'm pretty sure this is eligible for the federal tax credit. That's why I wanted to do that. You can pick a few and do a comparison. It'll just give you a side-by-side comparison. But for us, we're just going to keep on going. Let's just say our average bill is about $100 a month. And then you click on Show My Results. And this is where it's going to give us a nice report out. So it's going to give you a summary here of, that you would save in energy costs. So by charging your car with electricity over gas, fueling, you can save up to $1,672 in the very first year. It is eligible for the $7,500 $7,500 federal tax credit. Also for SMUD's Charge at Home incentive. That's the one where we'll install the charger for you. And up to $600 in the federal EV charger credit. So that's a federal tax credit as well for the EV charger. And there's more information available down below. And also carpool lane access. It gives you some information on carbon reduction, etc. And you can make a comparison here to a gas engine. So it's comparing this the Tesla Model 3 to the Audi A3 Premium, and you could change some of these inputs here, right here. I'm not going to do all that just now, but it's down here. It's going to give you kind of an accordion file with upfront costs, and here's some details here. So these are the costs that are associated with getting the vehicle started up. So gas engine, you may not, you're not going to have a charger, but it's going to cost, that's probably on the high side right there for most cases to purchase and install an EV charger. For the vehicle itself, these are the upfront costs. It's probably a down payment and closing costs, things like that. It's a little bit more with with an electric vehicle in this case for those particular vehicles. And so you can see that you're a little bit behind the curve right here. It's going to cost more in upfront costs, but look at the incentives. Let's see here. Look at that. There's $8,850. There are some qualifications. You know, there is some income limits on this availability of the $7,500. But that's what you can calculate by changing some of those inputs we looked at earlier. And average monthly expenses, it's going to look at the energy costs, you know, so fueling a gas car is more than an electric car. So it's a monthly savings of about $139 there. The financing costs, etc. Lifetime savings. It's really summarizing everything on all these accordion sections up top, so that you can see in this particular case, gas engine over the next 5 years is going to cost about $53,000 versus an electric vehicle around $43,000, has a savings of $10,519. That's kind of a very quick look. I just encourage you to go through it, play with it yourself. You can look at this break-even analysis. I don't go into that because it takes too long to explain, but it's very interesting. Some folks are really interested in it. So feel free to play around with it. Now, the second thing was, I said this electric for all tool, and I've already opened it up. And so you're going to come to a page like this, and hopefully that's not so huge that it looks really big on my screen here. But this is a tool where you can do some deeper research on electric vehicles. And what I'm going to encourage, you play around with it. There's a lot of stuff in here, but some of the best functionality and the most useful is for me, if you look at you know, the new EVs and incentives. This is going, you click on that, it's going to take you right up here. This is you know, populating. It always defaults to San Jose. We're working, by the way, on a customized site that's got all information on only SMUD, and so in another 3 or 4 months, we'll have a link on our site, and you get a lot more customized SMUD content. But let's see, 95817 was it? Is that the one I used? So yeah, it's a Sacramento zip code. You put in your zip code, put in any SMUD territory zip code. It's just going to bring up cars that are available in our area, which is basically all EVs are available. You can come in here and you could say, I want to compare this car to this car and to this car, and you can compare up to 3 cars by putting little check marks, and it's going to give you a little summary, the total costs, the number of seats, the battery capacity, the range on a full charge of the different vehicles. And you can see the Mini Cooper only has a range of 114 miles versus the Bolt at 247 and the Leaf S at 149. So you see some of that information. You can also look and see what some of this information is summarized down here too. It is a BEV, that's the range on it. If this was a gas, if it was a PHEV, there would be a little gas range there in the total range. And if you click on view incentives, it's going to take you up to a bunch of incentives, not all that not more than the ones that we've spoken about earlier. Some of these are a little bit more, uh, I'm just going to, the eligibility requirements are more difficult to meet um, than others. But feel free to look through all of them, of course. And there's this was the California Driving Clean Assistance Program. That's what I called Clean Cars for All earlier, up to $12,000. And if you click on read more, it'll ask you for some zip code information, and it'll get you to the AQMD site. The federal tax incentive applies for the Chevy Bolt because we're looking just at what's available for the Chevy Bolt. The alternative fuel infrastructure tax, so that's the tax credit for the federal tax credit for chargers, excuse me, EV chargers. I'm trying to think of the word. Some other programs here, and you'll see the SMUD Charge at Home program and the free EV charger. So this is the income qualified. So you can do a bunch of deep dives on various vehicles, and there's lots and lots of vehicles in here. You can just say, oh, I only want to look at Chevrolets, and boom, there you go. So it's going to be a much smaller list. But the Silverado's in there, the Chevy Bolts, which they're not manufacturing right now, but you can still buy them. They're going to be manufacturing them again, I understand, toward the end of the year. But you can apply all these kinds of filters and do some more deep research on vehicles and find out, which is the right EV for you. The next one that I'm going to recommend here, and again, I'm just going to go over here. These are a lot of articles. EV dealers, EV basics, EV myth busting, things like that. It's going to give you a lot of information if you want to read and do some research on general EV information. So we're going to pop over here to EV incentives. 95817.
John, do you mind if I pose a question that's in the chat that ties into where you're going here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we had a question about whether or not any of the current incentives are set to expire in the future. And I'd piggyback off of that and say, are there any incentive policies, legislations, proposals that are coming that may also be relevant for those looking to purchase a car in the next year or so?
I'm not really aware of anything. The federal tax credit is set and secure as secure as as secure as our government and whatever legislation gets passed in the future. But it's set to go through 2030. The Clean Cars for All program, as far as I know, that's always subject to funding. But as far as I know, there's no expiration date on that. I'm not aware of any other legislation that's pending regarding EV incentives. But there may be. I'm just not aware of anything. So I think it feels like the incentive part of the EV equation is pretty well set. It's pretty standardized right now, and I don't expect it to be changing.
We got a follow up to that specific to the HOV lanes for California, and the question is, are those changing in 2026?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, my understanding that it's not set to be not set to continue beyond 2026, but that's also subject to legislation. And this has happened before, and the legislature gets together and says, "Yeah, we really want to keep it's a valuable incentive to folks. I use it. I recognize its value. So it won't surprise me if they do extend it." But the other thing is if the EV market is starting to roll along pretty nicely. So when incentives are very useful to help build a market, but once the cost of the vehicles themselves comes down, as battery technology increase or advances, and the cost comes down, and the cost of manufacturing the car comes down, those incentives tend to back off too, because the incentives are designed to build a market, and once the market is built and sustaining on its own, the incentives tend to trail off.
Very
So this page.
good. And then a follow-up to the incentive. Sorry, John. Is there a limit on the number of times the incentives can be used? In other words, if I bought a new EV every year, could I get the federal tax credit every year?
That's a good question. The answer is I don't think so. It used to be no, you could only get it once per lifetime. I'd actually have to go through and look at that. That's one that I'm not certain of. But if you go here, and if I had time right now, I would do it. You could click right here on read more, and I'll just do that real quick and I'll show you where it takes you. It takes you right up here to an IRS page. And yeah, there's lots of information on here, and I don't see it just really quickly here, but I think that it's only once per household, but I can't swear to that. It's something I'm going to have to look up myself now. Good question. Thank you. You stumped me on that one.
Very good. That looks like it for the chat. So please do carry on. Thanks for the pause, John.
Yeah, we just have a couple more things to cover here. So this is just all the incentives that are available in this zip code. So if you lived in like PG&E territory and you put in a PG&E, you'd get additional incentives. In fact, if you live like I live in Galt, if I put Galt zip code in, it's going to pop up some PG&E because you know that zip code goes outside of Sacramento County, and so into some PG&E territory. So it's going to give you more incentives depending. It's customized to the zip code that you put in. So it's really a nice way to look at overall. This is everything that's available in my little area here. I think you get the same basic thing when you click on utility incentives. Yep, it's just going to give you the SMUD. If I click there, it's going to take us right back to that Drive Electric page. So let me go on here, and the last thing I want to show you is some information on charging. By the way, over here on this is, you know, TV commercials. These are Veloz, again, this organization dedicated to promoting electric vehicles and educating. These are all educational. There's some TV commercials with Arnold Schwarzenegger that they did, and some little other videos and myth busting facts. So it's just more research. Charging here, I want to take you over to this home charging advisor. This would take you to a map. This is going to take you to EV chargers. Now it retained the zip code I put in last, which is for Galt. And this is going to just take you to every EV charger that's available out there. So you can do a lot more research on EV chargers. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this. Just because I wanted to let me go back. Excuse me a second. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that zip code's stuck. It just makes it a little bit clearer. It's because I'm not going to show you a bunch of other incentives. So these are all the EV chargers available out there, and you can scroll through there, and there's just tons of them. Actually, it's just that got stuck on portable. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at one particular brand so you can search. You can see all these different brands of chargers. It's just tons of them, and some of them are very popular and others of them are not so well known. But these Enphase is a local company, and so just using this as an example, you can look at the different chargers, how much their output, the 7.868 kW. That may or may not make sense to you, but that will work. That has about 32 amps of output, and it'll work on a 40 amp circuit breaker. And you remember me saying earlier that these are all level 2 chargers. Again, that means that they run on 220 volts, but you can see they have some different power levels. So this 7.68 kilowatts is less powerful than this 9.6 kilowatts, which of course is less powerful than 11.52. So these are just Enphase chargers that are available, and some of them are more powerful than others. But your car is what determines how much power it can take. So for instance, a Nissan Leaf can only accept 6.6 kilowatts. I realize this gets into like, nerd alert here, and kind of some more technical subject matter. Just the point I want to make though is that some of them are more powerful than others, but they can be more expensive to install. So you can have more charger than you need, and it might cause you to have a panel upgrade or something like that. So we want to help you, that SMUD EV advisors that we talked about earlier. Those folks are there to help you understand the implications and to help you right size the charger. What charger do I need, and how's that going to impact my panel, and how much it's going to cost? We can help you with those kinds of things. So if we just look at this as a very popular, the Enphase IQ40 is a very popular. You click on that and it's going to show you some of the incentives they're available. What it doesn't show you, because again, SMUD is developing our own set of tools, but it doesn't show you the SMUD charge at home incentive, but it does show you this federal tax credit. And so it's giving you some estimations of what it's going to cost. And you can even click here and it'll take you to a site where you can buy the charger. So hopefully that, I'll just go back here to this screen here. If you want one that has a Wi-Fi, then you can click yes. If not, then it opens up a lot of other Enphase chargers. Some of them are Wi-Fi enabled. That means they'll connect to your phone and tell you if your car is charging, and you can start it and stop it and set timing of when it starts and stops, etc. So lots of little odds and ends, and I want to be sure not to create more questions than I answer here for you. But again, our EV advisors are there to help you, walk you through some of these more difficult questions if you're unsure. That's pretty much what I have for you. So this EV tool here is really powerful. It gives you a lot of good information. I encourage you to look at it, play around with it a little bit. And if you have your questions, give us a call.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Great information. I also wanted to give a big shout out to our audience today. We have had some great engagement, great questions. As they come up, feel free to contact either myself or John. And if we can't answer the question for you, we'll get you in touch with the person that can within SMUD to support you however we can, and make sure that we find out whether or not an EV is indeed right for you and your uses. With that, yeah. I'll say a big thank you for everybody for sticking it out. Thank you for working through the technical issues early on. Have a wonderful day and stay safe. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Joey. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.